You speak of quantum leaps as if they were rarities granted to a select few, as if the universe chose some to elevate and left others forgotten. But listen carefully. The leap is not a privilege. It's a result. It's not an exception. It's a law. It is the inevitable response of a consciousness that dared to shift beyond its old identity. Every sudden change you've ever witnessed in someone's life, every unexpected breakthrough, every transformation that seemed impossible, all of it was merely the reflection of an inner realignment. Nothing more. The world you see is just a surface, a shell, a pale mirror of what you hold in the silence of your imagination. You have been trained to believe that reality is solid, slow, resistant, that it requires time, effort, and favorable circumstances to move. But that is a lie. Reality is malleable like clay, obedient like a servant, shapeable like a breath on the surface of water. What makes it rigid is not its nature, but your attachment to the old identity. When you insist on being who you've always been, the world remains as it has always been. But when you change your inner state, deeply, irrevocably, the world has no choice but to follow. A quantum leap occurs when the internal transformation is so intense that reality needs to reorganize rapidly. It's not physical strength, it's not logic, it's not a linear sequence, it is a change in nature. It's when you stop operating at the level of how, when, will it work, and start acting in the only sphere where power truly exists, the assumed state. You don't strive to achieve, you assume and express. You don't try to improve, you become. You don't wait, you command. And listen to this as one who hears an awakening truth. You are not trying to create something new. You are merely choosing which of the infinite versions of yourself you wish to embody now. The quantum leap is not you going to the future. It is the future coming to you, responding to the identity you have decided to uphold. When your consciousness positions itself at a new point, everything around you, sooner or later, must obey. Therefore, I tell you, stop looking for signs, let go of the desire for confirmation, abandon the anxiety for change. None of this provokes the leap. The leap is born from the moment you declare, in absolute inner silence, I am now what I have decided to be. And the instant that sentence ceases to be imagination and becomes identity, the entire universe begins to move. You don't see it, but it bends. You don't perceive it, but it adjusts routes, finds paths, tears down barriers, builds bridges. The leap begins in the invisible, and the invisible is you. Prepare yourself. Because whoever understands this no longer lives through slow changes, but experiences inevitable transformations. It's curious how people think they can change their lives while keeping intact the identity that creates exactly what they complain about. They want leaps, but they continue to feel, think, and react like someone trapped in the old cycle. And this is where the first principle begins. No one can experience a reality they do not accept being. There is no quantum leap as long as you insist on carrying the same self-conception. Life does not respond to what you desire. It responds to what you are at your core. And what you are is revealed not in words, but in the state you inhabit when no one is looking. Have you noticed that whenever you try to improve your life, you end up returning to the same point? This happens because no matter how much you change your actions, you don't change the internal place from which they originate. The old self continues to command everything. It still thinks like someone fighting for scraps, waiting for permission, hoping for luck. And this self cannot, by law, access the reality you claim to want. The leap demands a break, not with the world, but with the old identity. It's not about feeling better, nor about thinking positively at certain moments. It's about completely abandoning the idea of who you believed yourself to be for years. Observe your current life, everything in it. Your limitations, your achievements, your relationships, your income, your opportunities is consistent with the state you have been upholding. Nothing you experience is against you. It is merely obeying what you have assumed to be true about yourself. Therefore, the first step is this. Stop trying to adjust the scenery and start changing the actor. As long as you insist on improving the scenery while being the same character, nothing will change. But when the character changes, the entire script needs to be rewritten. And this change is not emotional, it is ontological. It's not about feeling worthy for a few minutes. It's about recognizing yourself as inherently worthy. It's not about imagining you can have prosperity. It's about assuming prosperity before any evidence. It's about declaring internally, I am no longer one who struggles. I am one who receives, and upholding that identity with the same naturalness with which you hold your name. The quantum leap is not a change in the world. It is a change in who observes the world. And the world, like an obedient mirror, merely reflects. When you abandon the old identity, not with effort but with decision, the invisible moves. Life begins to rearrange all the pieces, as if responding to a silent command, and that is precisely what it is, a command. Because when you internally assume yourself to be something, reality cannot refuse. It is obliged to follow. Nothing changes out there until you change in here. And the quantum leap begins in that instant, when you finally let die who you no longer are, to assume who you always were. It is almost inevitable that you will expect some kind of sign before believing that something has changed. The human mind has been conditioned to trust what it sees, as if the visible were the origin of reality. But this is the second principle. The invisible reacts before the visible, always. This is where most people fail, not due to incapacity, but due to impatience. They want the world to confirm what they have assumed for only a few moments. They want quick proof, external validation, coincidences that make them believe. But that which requires confirmation will never be creation, it will only be reaction. When you decide to assume a new state, nothing changes out there immediately, and that is exactly how it should be. The three-dimensional world is slow, dense, delayed, like a shadow that always appears after the body that casts it. First, the state consolidates in the invisible. First, you establish yourself in the silence of consciousness as someone who already possesses. First, you internally live the chosen truth, and only then does the physical world bend to follow. That is why I say, do not wait for signs. Signs do not come before the leap. They come after. The sign is not a confirmation for you to believe. It is the reflection of what you have already believed. People who live waiting for evidence become slaves to the world they observe. They live reacting to what has already been, never creating what will be. They ask, plead, desire, but they remain in a state of doubt, and doubt, however small, creates delay. The faith I speak of is not emotion. It is not hope. It is not optimism. It is silent conviction. It is knowing, not by logic, but by identity. It is not needing anything external to uphold what you have decided to be. It is maintaining your inner stance, even when everything seems the same. And this is the part few can endure, remaining firm when nothing has changed. This is where the leap is decided. When you assume a state and maintain it, even without evidence, the invisible begins to reorganize. People change their behavior, opportunities arise, paths open, obstacles fall, not by chance, but because you have altered the cause. You don't see the movement immediately, but it happens, it always happens. There is an intelligence behind everything, responding to your inner stance. And when the signs finally appear, they do not come to convince you, they come to obey you. Reality only reacts when you no longer need it to prove anything. This is the secret almost no one understands. First you believe without seeing, then you see without needing to believe. This is how the invisible creates the visible. This is how the quantum leap manifests. This is where many stumble without realizing it. They imagine that simply visualizing quickly, thinking positively for a few minutes, or repeating ready-made phrases is enough for something to change. But the imagination that creates is not this loose, distracted imagination that appears and disappears like a faint dream. Creative imagination is discipline, direction, and persistence. It does not show you what you want to see. It shows you what you decide to see. And that is why this third principle is so powerful. Sustained imagination is the matrix of all transformation. Think of how many times you have imagined the worst, feared something, anticipated problems, and somehow seen all of it manifest faster than any positive desire. This happens because imagination does not differentiate good and bad. It merely accepts what you offer with intensity and emotional conviction. The problem is not a lack of imagination, it is a lack of direction. You imagine, but you imagine in the wrong state. You create, but you create from the old identity. The mind always follows orders. What changes is who is in command. Powerful imagination is not made of grand images, but of internal coherence. It is keeping the final scene alive until it becomes as natural as the memory of something that has already happened. It is feeling the new state until it ceases to be future and becomes an intimate present. This requires something few are willing to develop: silent repetition. Not mechanical repetition, but living repetition. The scene does not need to be perfect, elaborate, full of details. It needs to be felt, because creative imagination is not visual, it is sensory. The universe does not respond to what you see within, it responds to what you feel as truth. And here is the key. Feeling is not emotion, feeling is identity. When you repeat the final scene, you are not trying to convince yourself of anything. You are getting accustomed to the new self. You are tuning your consciousness to the desired reality. You are, little by little, letting go of the old character and assuming the new one. When this happens, you notice something curious. Imagination ceases to be effort and becomes recognition. You don't imagine to create. You imagine because you already are. And the more natural this feeling becomes, the more inevitable the quantum leap, because the physical world, slow as it is, merely waits for you to finalize the internal construction before it begins to move. Nothing external rushes forward before the internal is consolidated. Imagination is the workshop where everything is molded before it is seen. When you master it, you master life. When you neglect it, you live at the mercy of circumstances. Those who truly understand this principle no longer live wishing. They live concluding. They no longer live seeking signs. They live inhabiting the end. And the world, as always, obeys. It is almost instinctive to look at the world and believe it is definitive, solid, unquestionable, that what you see is what is. But this is the great deception, the veil that keeps people trapped in the same story for years. They believe more in the scenery than in the cause that generated it. And this is where the fourth principle is revealed. The quantum leap never happens for those hypnotized by appearances. As long as you kneel before what you see, you renounce the power of what is. External reality is always late, always an echo, always a consequence, never the origin. It is not what commands you, it is what obeys you. Most people try to manifest something new by looking at old conditions. They want healing while observing symptoms. They want prosperity while mentally repeating the overdue bill. They want love while revisiting rejections. And then they ask why nothing changes. Nothing changes because they continue to be guided by the old reflection. The awakened creator does the opposite. They look at what is and choose to ignore it, not out of escapism, not out of childish denial, but out of authority. They know that appearance is merely the trace of the old state, and that fighting against it is wasting time on shadows. The quantum leap demands unusual courage, the courage to remain faithful to the invisible, even when the visible screams the opposite. It is resisting the temptation to react. It is not rushing to try to correct circumstances. It is not allowing the scenery to determine who you are. Because the instant you react to the external, you return to the old state. Appearance wins and the leap unravels. But when you remain anchored in the new state, even when everything seems the same, something profound happens. Power returns to its place of origin. You take back the wheel and realize abandoning appearances does not mean ignoring material reality. It means not treating it as a master. Appearance is a photograph of the past, a frozen image of the old vibration, a delayed piece of evidence of what has already been. It has the right to exist, but not the right to command. You can see it without obeying it. You can acknowledge it without bowing to it. You can observe it without assuming it says anything about you now. This stance, silent and firm, is what breaks the cycle. When you do not react to appearances, the internal state is maintained. And when the internal state is maintained, the invisible reorganizes without interruption. This is what dissolves obstacles, opens doors, creates opportunities that never existed before. It is not coincidence, it is not magic, it is not luck, it is consequence. Appearance loses its power, and the assumed state becomes the new reference point for life. And then, inevitably, the world begins to change. Because it always obeys those who do not bow to it. There is a moment when everything changes, not because something happened in the world, but because something happened within you. This moment is silent, almost invisible, but it transforms absolutely everything. It is when you finally decide to live as if it were already now. Not as someone who waits, not as someone who desires, not as someone who tries to believe, but as someone who already is. This is the fifth principle, and it is what separates those who merely know the law from those who truly utilize it. Nothing manifests as long as you continue acting like someone who has not yet received. Reality responds to attitudes, not to expectations. Have you noticed that when you deeply believe in something, even if only for a few moments, your choices change, your tone changes, your demeanor changes, the options you consider possible change? This internal movement is what creates the leap. The world does not bow to those who ask. It bows to those who live as owners. What you assume in your posture, your silence, and your daily decisions creates a field around you that tells the world, this is who I am now. And the world, obedient, begins to reorganize everything around that vibration. Living as if it were already now does not mean pretending, nor forcing artificial behaviors. It is not a performance. It is an internal coherence so profound that it expresses itself naturally. It is when you wake up and even before opening your eyes, you already know that you belong to the desired state. It is when your reactions change. Not because you are trying to be someone different, but because you have become someone different. The exterior may still look the same, but you are no longer inside it. You move from another place. And here is the point. The quantum leap happens when your consciousness stops waiting for permission. When you stop looking at circumstances and start acting in accordance with your assumed identity. If you are truly prosperous, how do you think? How do you decide? How do you react? How do you walk? If you are truly loved, how do you interpret the silence of others? If you are truly healthy, how do you position yourself regarding your body? The true state is revealed in small gestures, and it is in these gestures that the world reads who you are. When you live as if it were already now, the universe has no choice. It must respond. It must conform. It must open doors. Because you are no longer asking, you are affirming. You are no longer desiring. You are expressing. You are no longer waiting. You are existing. Life responds quickly to consolidated states, and slowly to indecisive states. That is why anyone who divides their identity between what is and what they desire remains stuck halfway. But whoever upholds the new state as an inevitable present, that person sees the leap. That person creates the impossible. That person experiences what others would call a miracle, but which, for those who understand the law, is merely a consequence. We have arrived at the point where everything is revealed with absolute simplicity. You do not need permission, nor signs, nor favorable circumstances to transform your life. The quantum leap is not a rare event granted by the universe. It is the inevitable result of a consciousness that finally assumes its true position of creation. Everything you have heard until now points to a single truth. Nothing changes externally as long as you continue to inhabit the same place internally. Reality does not fail, does not hesitate, does not delay. It simply obeys. When you abandon the old identity, when you stop looking for signs, when you discipline your imagination, when you ignore appearances, and when you live now as if it already were, you align yourself with a power that was never outside of you. You stop being a beggar of life and become its author. There is no resistance capable of preventing a state assumed with conviction. There is no delay capable of overcoming a consolidated identity. Life always responds, always to what you are within. Therefore I tell you with the firmness of one who knows the law, stop begging for change. Stop waiting for something to happen. Stop looking at the world as if it had authority over you. The world is delayed. It is a shadow. It is an echo. The origin is within you. Assume now, without hesitation, the state you have chosen to live. Declare in silence what is already true within you. Walk as someone who has received. Think as someone who possesses. Feel as someone who already lives. And you will see what few see. Reality bending to your command. The impossible becoming inevitable. Doors opening effortlessly, the right people appearing at the exact moment, paths forming where there was once nothing. Not because the world decided to favor you, but because you decided to assume who you truly are. Everything is already created, everything already exists. The quantum leap happens the instant you stop waiting and begin to be.